Striking both ISIL and Kurdish fighters, Turkey is stepping up its military involvement in Syria. But is intervention the answer to Turkish security concerns? And how can Turkey's changing policy affect the long-running war? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Darine Abu Gaida. The war in Syria is becoming increasingly complicated. Several factions and international alliances are fighting it out both on the ground and in the air. And now Kurdish areas in the north are being heavily targeted. The U.S. is warning it won't hesitate to open fire on the Syrian army if it continues to attack fighters from the U.S.-backed Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces in Hasaka. Now, to the west of the city of Manbij, Turkish forces are attacking Kurdish YPG positions. The Turkish government accuses the YPG of being an extension of the Kurdistan Workers Party, or the PKK. Turkey's armed forces has been at war with the PKK separatists for more than 20 years. Now, the Turkish government's vowing to get rid of ISIL from border areas. Turkish artillery is targeting ISIL fighters in the northern Syrian town of Jarabulus. Turkey says that in response to cross-border mortar fire from Syria.
DAEŞ, diğer terör örgütleriyle sonuna kadar mücadele edeceğiz.
We will fight ISIL and other terrorist organizations until the end. We will continue to support the countries who fight against them. Our border region must be completely cleansed of ISIL. It is important for us to give the necessary support needed to get rid of a group from this area during this period.
So let's just take a look at who controls what in northern Syria. ISIL fighters are not just on the border with Turkey, but remain in the cities of Al-Bab and Jarabulus. So they're in effect a part of the autonomous Kurdish region known as Rojava. The Kurds have gained more territory since the war started more than 5 years ago. And they're now in control of large areas in the north, stretching from Hasaka all the way to Afrin, that's north of Aleppo. Let's bring in our guests for this discussion. In Ankara, we have Bilal Sambur. He's a professor of social sciences at Yildirim Beyazit University. In Beirut, Renad Mansour, a scholar at the Carnegie Middle East Center. In Erbil, Dilawer Ala Eldin. He's the president of the Middle East Research Institute. Welcome to all of you. Bilal, if I may start with you, the Turkish foreign minister is saying that ISIL should be, quote, completely cleansed from northern Syria. But the Turkish bombardment, as it is, has also struck YPG positions north of Manbij. Why is Turkey shelling both ISIL and the YPG?
Well, in order to answer your question, we must understand that the perception of Turkish government of the threat. According to Turkish government, there are two main threats in Syria. The first threat is ISIL. But in the eyes of Turkey, ISIL is a threat, but it is not a strategic threat. It is a sort of manageable, it is a sort of temporary threat. On the other hand, Turkey considers YPG and PYD as a strategical threat, which must be cleaned radically. So, as you know that in the recent days, ISIL attacked Turkey, YPG tried to, YPG catched Manbij. In the light of this development, Turkey wants to stop the advancement of YPG. At the same time, Turkey wants to secure its border from ISIL.
Dilawer, what do you make of Turkey shelling YPG positions near Manbij after it was retaken from ISIL?
Well, I think the whole picture is now complicated by Turkey making the right sort of moves or decision for the wrong reason. Turkey has tolerated ISIS on its border for too long until it became a threat. And Turkey has also hoped that the Free Syrian Army would take Jarabulus, not the Kurds. Now, at this stage, Turkey is shelling the Kurds to stop their advance and weaken them, and they're shelling the ISIS groups so that the Free Syrian Army can take it before the Kurds take it. So really, Turkey has not yet launched an all-out war to defeat ISIS, to eliminate ISIS. These are just skirmishes, a little bit of help coming too late, only with a focus on preventing the Kurds rather than for defeating Daesh altogether. And you can see that Turkey is going out of its way to reach out for its former its enemies like Assad regime, or its former foes like Russia and Iran, all for the sake of stopping the Kurds from expanding from Manbij and adding to their recent successes and extend their areas that they liberated with the help of the democratic Syrian army and the Americans. So Turkey, yes, of course, they are fighting ISIS, but that's not enough. It's too little, too late, and they are focused wrongly on really defeating the Kurds, whereas they should be engaging the Kurds, adding to the collective international efforts and the US efforts to defeat ISIS, and maybe embracing the Kurds to make them their allies, and with the ultimate aim of persuading them to negotiate with the Free Syrian Army, to be friends and to establish some kind of stability in the region. Of course, if Turkey wants to stop the Kurds from breaking Syria or having autonomous area, that can happen with engagement, with negotiation, rather than trying to eliminate everybody on this side of the border, which Turkey cannot. Therefore, I believe this is not going anywhere for Turkey.
Renaud, just weigh in on your opinion, what we're seeing happen right now. And also, Delaware was just talking about what's going on in Jarabulus, or what could go on. So it is being reported that there is a plan for the Free Syrian Army to attack Jarabulus, which is currently under the control of ISIL. And this, in effect, could be a way to prevent any Kurdish efforts to control that area. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think that both guests are right to some extent. Of course, Turkey, its existential threat is actually the Kurds. Much more than ISIS is an existential threat to the Kurdish state, at least as how it's perceived by the senior Kurdish leadership, the Turkish leadership. And I think right now what you have in Turkey is a questioning of whether the policy in Syria over the last 5 or 6 years has been the right policy. And you're beginning to see a lot of blaming Davutoglu, the former foreign minister, and others as to how Turkey has managed to really have such an incoherent policy. But there has been one thing in that policy that has been the most coherent, and that is the Kurdish policy. They've tried to limit Kurdish advancements, and they're worried about groups that they view to be linked to the PKK, a group that it recognizes a terrorist group, to spread in Syria. So definitely what's happening now, especially in the domestic situation in Turkey, where you have, for example, the Second Army, much of which has been purged, when capabilities are also being questioned, Turkey really needs to rely on certain allies to limit the Kurdish question. Part of that is, as Delaware said, reaching out to former foes, maybe perhaps even speaking to the Assad regime or to Russia, which has been supporting the Kurds in this year, but also to looking for the Free Syrian Army and other sort of what people would call moderate rebel groups, I suppose, to be able to limit Kurdish advancements.
But Renaud, but doesn't this put
advancements that are the most problematic?
Let me ask you about the YPG specifically. Doesn't this put Turkey in a bit of a difficult situation when it's attacking YPG fighters who have been instrumental, really, in fighting ISIL in Syria as part of the Syrian Democratic Forces?
Yeah, but I mean, as I say, as the Syrian war, as perceived by Turkey, the most problematic element of it is the Kurdish advancements. Even more problematic than ISIL advancements, I would argue, particularly on its border. But now what you have is obviously Daesh coming and having bombs and incidents inside the Turkish country, so it's becoming a bit more of a problem. But still, the YPG is perceived by the Turkish government as the most serious threat to its existence, so therefore an existential threat. So insofar as that is the case, it'll continue to try and stop these advancements. And this is not new. When Turkey entered this, so-called entered the Syrian war, it said that it's going to go against terrorists. not only the Islamic State, but it also went against the Kurdish groups, the YPG, and it's actually been focusing much more on the YPG than on than Daesh, as was already said today.
Bilal, but how far is the Turkish government willing to go to combat the Kurdish advances, specifically in the north parts of Syria?
Well, it is really, this is a very complicated question, but under present condition, we could observe two new developments. The first development, the first half Turkish army attacked Jarabulus and openly declared that Jarabulus must be cleaned from ISIL. The second thing is Turkish army shows extraordinary mobility and activity in the city of Kargamış. In the light of these two new developments, we could say that Turkish army and security forces try to open the way for the new military movement of Free Syrian Army. I think Turkey probably will use Free Syrian Army and other opposition faction against ISIL as well as against Kurdish PYG advancement.
Delaware, do you agree with that?
I was saying that Turkey has done what it can to weaken the Kurdish side, especially in Syria, but they have failed. If anything, the Kurds have grown stronger, they had more allies by the East and West, and they have more American commitment to support them, and they have been utterly focused on fighting ISIS. So they have been the most effective force on the ground, and the Americans can't afford to let them go or find any alternative because there are none. So Turkey is really limited to what it can do in Syria, but Turkey considers whatever happens in Syria and the Syrian Kurds as an extension of its own internal problems with the Kurds. Now, the Turkish house is on fire. There is polarization. There are gaps everywhere. There is even this recent coup d'etat attempt. So Turkey, instead of reaching out for its own Kurds and restart the peace process and engage the Kurdish leaders there, it's still going after them inside Turkey and outside. So it's actually, Turkey found it easier to reach out to Assad, to Russia, to Iran, than actually to talk to the pro-Kurdish HDP party or to restart the negotiation with PKK and engage with PYD. Now, recently, the HDP and PKK have declared their willingness to restart the peace process. They have even been self-critical about the mistakes that they have made in the past. But it takes two to tango. It really needs the Turkish side to be self-critical, to pause, to say we need to put the house in order, reinvest in peace, and see where things have gone wrong, and then build the future rather than so much go after a losing battle. Because to defeat PKK, PYD, the Kurds, it's not only impossible, you could see that Turkey has policies towards the Kurds in Turkey, Kurds in Syria, Kurds in Iraq, but they don't have a pan-Kurdish policy to deal with the entire Kurdish question and say, how can we rebuild a neighborhood? Because Turkey is very important to everyone. And peace inside Turkey will be peace in the neighborhood, peace in the entire Middle East. So I would encourage the Turkish policymakers to revisit all this and relook and use logic, use common sense.
Just the point that you were making on the Turks, you're saying reaching out to Bashar al-Assad. Has that been a bad thing, especially this week, considering that what we're seeing in Hasaka happen is that Syrian government forces are now fighting against Kurdish forces, whereas in the past they had worked together to a certain degree?
Well, I tell you what, reaching out to anybody to establish dialogue for peace is not a bad thing. Even reaching out to Bashar, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it. There's no right or wrong here. But my point is, if Turkey and the Turkish government is prepared to go all the way to engage with a traditional enemy, why can't they engage with their own countrymen who are actually more important for their own future, for their own rule, for their own house?
Okay.
So it's easier for Turkey to re-engage the Kurds rather than their traditional enemies. There's no way that they can achieve as much with Syria, with Bashar Assad, if they just do half of that with their own Kurds.
Okay, let me put that to Renaud. Let me put that to Renaud, because Renaud, I see you nodding along. So why is it that Turkey cannot engage with what's traditionally known as their enemies?
Well, I think there are several reasons why. First of all, Turkey and Syria were actually on an agreement and an alliance since 1998 until the beginning of the Syrian civil war. So they did have an agreement, and so therefore they do have this history of having an agreement because they both view the Kurdish issue as an existential crisis. And I think second of which is really important, is as of late, as we've seen, especially after the coup, but in the previous elections in Turkey, Erdogan no longer really needs the Kurds of his country electorally. He's managing to use some of the Turkish nationalist parties to win seats and to maintain his majority. And for these two reasons, I think that it's more difficult to see, as great as it sounds and as right as Delaware is, that Turkey needs to engage with the Kurds. What we really have been seeing in the last few years, beginning in 2015, the summer of 2015, what we've really been seeing is an instigation of the Kurds and resuming hostilities. So I don't think we're very close to any sort of negotiations, even though, you know, today the president of the Kurdistan region of Iraq, Masoud Barzani, arrived in Turkey to hold talks. So there, I mean, I suppose that what Turkey has tried to do in the past is to use its allies. It does have Kurdish allies. It's Iraqi Kurdish allies, led by Masoud Barzani, to kind of work with or try and understand or, you know, or influence the Syria theater.
Right.
So I suppose negotiations will work through that proxy, but I think it's doubtful to see bilateral negotiations between the YPG and the Turkish authorities.
Bilal, speaking of Barzani, so he is expected to hold talks with Turkish officials. Will anything come out of that?
I don't think there will be nothing new will come out of this visit. Basically, Barzani want to show his solidarity with Turkish government against the 15 July failed coup attempt. At the same time, Barzani asked the support of Turkey in the issue of independent referendum and especially the growing threat of PKK. I expect that there will be a new alliance between Barzani and Turkey against PKK.
Delaware, do you expect that to happen?
Can I, Darren, can I just come in here?
Jump in, please.
I would disagree. I would disagree here because, first of all, it is in the interest of the Kurds in Iraq to see the peace process in Turkey starting again and to have this area, this entire neighborhood to calm down. And Mr. Barzani is intending to meet the leaders of not only AK Party but also HDP, the pro-Kurdish party. That is actually to stimulate a debate on restarting peace process. Importantly, I think Turkey and the Turkish leaders would be well advised. It's in their interest to take up the visit of Mr. Biden as an opportunity to seek American help, to actually put pressure on all the Kurds to sit down at the table and then put pressure on AK Party and then engage them all. So Turkey should use these opportunities to bring peace about, to actually engage everybody in a dialogue and solve the problems that they have been trying to solve using military forces. There is no end to this vicious circle of using violence to solve problems. Turkey has lost a lot. Everyone has lost. The Turkish people have lost. I think this is an opportunity should not be lost. Mr. Biden is going there. It's in the American interest to actually refocus efforts on ISIS and mediate between the Kurds and Turkey, and they would love to do that. It's up to the Turks now to use everyone's presence as an occasion to push forward this peace process.
Renaud, we know that the Kurds and the Americans are allies on the battlefield, at least. What will come out of Joe Biden's visit? I mean, is he going to be able to put this pressure on the Kurds and the Turks, as Delaware seems to hope that Biden will?
I'm not sure. As I say, the realities on the ground are a bit discouraging. I mean, you've had recently, Erdogan's first trip after the failed coup attempt. Where did he go? He went to Russia. And so you have relations with Russia kind of coming together. But again, the Americans are still trying to be involved. They have their own agreement with Russia on Syria. There might be some chance for the Americans to convince Turkey to allow some of the Kurdish groups to prosper, or to at least gain some sort of legitimacy within the country. And there might also be, Biden might be able to push the Daesh issue insofar as he might be able to say, listen, the Islamic State is much more of a threat right now for all of us than the Kurds are, so let's focus on getting rid of the Islamic State first. Let's focus on moving towards Raqqa first. But I still think that medium term, if we're talking medium term, it'll be hard to convince Erdogan, who's now centralizing his power, to really engage with the Kurds, particularly Kurds that are linked to the PKK, because there are internal Kurdish issues in Turkey right now, but particularly Kurds that are linked to the PKK and the YPG. It'll be hard to see Biden, for him to have that ability to convince Erdogan to completely change his course.
And Bilal, when the Turkish Prime Minister says that Ankara will take a more active role in Syria in the next 6 months to prevent the country from being divided along ethnic lines, what is he referring to here? Because there is some that believe that this is a reference to the YPG gains that have been made in the north recently. Do you see it that way?
Well, first of all, the recent Turkish foreign policy, it has been formulated in a way, increase your friend, decrease your enemy. In the light of this new formulation, Turkish government tried to follow two ways. The first one, Turkish tried to establish alliance with Assad regime, Iran and Syria. Through these new alliances, Turkey wants to fight against the PYG and tries to minimize Kurdish gains in Rojava. On the other hand, Turkey tries to re-establish his alliance with the US against ISIL. And in the light of these two new way of Turkish policy, Turkey believes that Turkey will be a more powerful actor in Syria, and through this as a powerful actor, they could change the course of future development.
Okay, so speaking of Iran, Bilal, just speaking of Iran, we know that Erdogan is heading to Iran later this week. What message is he taking to the country and to the leadership?
Probably there are two main issues. There will be two main issues in this visit. The first one is economical issue, basically try to increase economical and trade relations between Iran and Turkey. The second one is there will be Syrian issue, Kurdish issue in Rojava and Iraq. So, but basically Turkey will ask Iran to stop the advancement of PYG in Rojava.
Okay, Dilawer, just the last few words for you, because I see you wanted to jump in there.
Well, basically, what Bilal was saying about Turkey's new policy, reducing enemies, increasing friends, what we've seen since that was spoken is actually the reverse. And this is really what is leading to this visit by Mr. Biden, all its developments. And if Turkey is trying to achieve their goal, their new policy, by engaging everybody, they should be minimizing the chances of violence, engaging the Kurds. If they want to keep Syria's integrity, it's not by really being barriers for progress in terms of American and Kurdish and other policies towards defeating ISIS. They should be also engaging Europe and America in the way they should, so that they could get more help in achieving their objective. So the way that Turkey is going about it, the signs are that they are more continuing the more recent policy rather than new policy.
Right.
So what we are saying is that Mr. Biden and Mr. Erdogan will have a tough negotiation tomorrow, but they should get a lot out of it, and simply the outcome should be more peace, more stability, rather than more polarization.
All right, on that note, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much to all of my guests, Bilal Sambour, Renad Mansour, and Dilawer Ala Al-Din. Thank you very much for joining us. And Thank you for watching. You can always see this program again anytime. You can visit our website, aljazeera.com. You can have a further discussion as well by going to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From myself and the whole team here in Doha. Goodbye for now.